Hi everybody, it's Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and as last week's episode ended, you saw us in the home improvement store and we finally made a decision on what the material was we were going to use in the overhead of the boat. So let me just give you a little bit of a preview. We've used some material similar to this, a very thin pine slat ceiling in our previous boat 6-7 years ago. And over time, the grooves were so narrow, so shallow, they separated from the expansion and contraction in a couple of places, and there were a few spots where it just didn't look good. So we weren't going to go with that same setup for that exact reason, but we ran across something that we think will work. This is 3/4 inch premium pine slats. 3/4 inch thick means there is a much deeper tongue in this, almost a 1/2 inch. And essentially these things just fit together. I have 8-foot long pieces that we'll use for the ceiling, but I wanted to show you what this looks like. It gives me my overhead that sort of looks like this. So in this episode, you'll see all the things that go along with a project like this. Choosing your material, determining what you need to do for lighting and electrical wires, and taking advantage of the fact that you have the old overhead down. Insulation and condensation control. Got a myriad of opinions out there, so we'll go into some detail in this episode of what we heard, what we tested, and what we think is going to work best for us and why. Well, we hope you enjoy this week's episode, and if you do, and we earned it, please do give us a like and subscribe to the channel, or share it with other people that you think might enjoy it. Enjoy the video.
Today's projects on the boat, we're going to be tearing down the old ceiling here in our test pieces for pieces that we thought we would like, which we didn't, and install the new pieces that we found that we like, getting rid of these big, bulky house-like fixtures.
So this is the test wood we put up before, and you can see this cheap sort of composite board is just too flexible. So that's coming out. Test failed, but I'm glad we did it. And now we're going to take out this ceiling, as Deb mentioned, and that is actually solid plywood. And it's not easy to take out, so I might actually take my circular saw and just run a line all the way across the whole darn thing. Let's see.
The first thing to do was to remove these old 110-volt house fixtures. We turned the breaker off, ensured there was no power at them, took them all down off of the ceiling, and disconnected the wire. At this point, we needed to determine where that wire went before we started to run a saw over that wood up top.
So we did a little tracing of the wires, and it looks like the power wire here from this one comes this direction and into this particular cupboard behind the ceiling, and ultimately it is tapped into a regular 110-volt outlet, so we're about to get rid of that.
There are specific wiring standards on a boat versus what's in a house. This boat didn't have all of that in place, so we're correcting it as we go. If you're not sure how to do this kind of work, it would certainly work to hire a qualified marine electrician. With the power disconnected, it was now time to pull the wires out of the ceiling, get them out of the way, and then remove some of the insulation that was in the old test part of the ceiling.
Grab, pull, 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 pull. Come on, you can do it. Pull.
I can't.
Ready? Put your fingers up in there. Let me get this out.
I can tear the whole thing down.
Ooh. That big old dead cockroach in there. Yuck.
Where? Ew.
And now it was just a matter of removing the rest of the insulation from the ceiling here.
We've removed the insulation and cleaned the condensation off the part of the ceiling we'd already pulled down, and now we're going to start working on this section, all this plywood up here. It's not easy to get to because it's epoxied up there, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically cut a line all the way down this whole thing, and that'll give me something to pry and pull on because that goes all the way across, as you can see, all the way across to the starboard side, and it's also over here as well.
Let's go ahead and get to cutting while Deb also removes some of the temporary supports we put up on the test ceiling.
baby.
All right, so we've pulled this side out just roughly. We'll now do the same on the other side, haul all this stuff out and vacuum up because I'm actually finding dirt dauber nests in here. Every job comes with the cleanup job. I cut the ceiling out and Deb mops behind me. You got the unfun part, don't you?
That's not too bad. Alright. So we started over here.
Will not move.
Alright, at least I did.
Well, my toes
Gil started over
not
there
Make her move.
with the
Well, why
first layer
why
of
move? Why
insulation, and then we're going to go get the closed foam cell. So hopefully that fixes our problem.
All right, so we have most of it done. We ran out of foil-backed vapor barrier, so we got to run to the store. But in this far side, we have the foil barrier and 1 inch thick of closed cell foam. In this section, we have vapor barrier and 2 layers of 1 inch foam. Over there, we also have the vapor barrier and 2 1 inch layers of foam. Right up above my head, we ran out of tape, so we had to go get some more of the silver tape, and that is 2 layers of 1 inch foam with a vapor barrier.
As Deb and I have been considering our insulation in the ceiling, we went out to the internet forums, which is always it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. You get a lot of information. Sometimes you'll get equal amounts of information that contradict one another, so you got to sort of decipher it and try your best. It's why you guys have often seen me on this channel talk about wanting to test things and validate what really works for us. So I got kind of a myriad of opinions, and I'm sure this isn't necessarily the exact right one, but this is the way that we went about, 1, trying out a solution, 2, validating whether it would work for us, and then lastly, was somewhat cost effective in addition. And I'm not looking to be completely cheap, but I also didn't want to spend a tremendous amount of money if I could do something that's 85% of the overall result for 40% of the cost. So let me kind of talk about what we started to go down the path of, and then got nervous based on some of the responses we saw when we posed the question out to people and asked what they suggested. So we went with something like this. It's called a radiant barrier, and forgive any kind of glare here. This stuff comes in sheets and rolls, and it's designed essentially for homes to go right up against the bottom side of the roof decking. The purpose behind this is it's a radiant barrier, so the sunlight comes down, hits the roof. In our case, it's the deck. In a home, it would be the shingles and the plywood. It hits this and reflects a lot of that heat back out of the surface. So this radiant barrier is what we have up against the bottom side of the deck, right up against the fiberglass. We held it in place with this silver, I'm going to say duct tape, but I don't mean duct tape like the sticky stuff you use to repair everything like baling wire. This is actually made for air conditioning and heating ducts. It's an aluminum tape that you can put around them. So that's what we started with. We wanted this radiant barrier, but we knew we needed more insulation than that. So we also went ahead and put in this 1 inch thick closed cell foam. We just bought the sheets of this stuff at Home Depot. There's a lot of different materials like this. There's stuff that a very well-respected friend referred us to called Armacell, but the stuff also is very expensive, about $600 for a 4-foot by 35-foot roll. So pretty costly and not quite as readily available as running down to the local Home Depot. This doesn't have quite the insulation properties. The nice thing about something like that Armacell is it's a flexible foam as opposed to rigid, and it has an adhesive right on the material itself. And that adhesive is pretty key, because what we found out after doing this is if air gets between the fiberglass and this radiant barrier, they're still going to allow condensation to form. So after we did about half of the ceiling, we decided that we really wanted to go ahead and test it. It was a good cool night last night. The heat was on down below, and I say cool night, since people watch this in different parts of the country, that meant it was in the mid-30s last night. So it was a fairly cold day for southern Louisiana. And we had the heat, on at 70 degrees or so down inside the boat. Classic time when condensation forms. So today, we went ahead and ran a little bit of a test, and we decided that we would pull some of this down and see what the result was. Let me kind of show you how we tested this, and then what the outcome of that test was. Okay, so to orient yourself, we have this closed cell foam, and as I mentioned, we have 2 layers of that. So right here is the bottom 1-inch layer, there's another 1-inch layer behind that, and then the radiant barrier is up above it. And because we didn't tape these edges, right, you can kind of see air can get in behind there. If we reach our hand in here and we touch this, it's wet. I can feel quite a bit of condensation in there, almost droplets form on my fingers, if you can see this. There, you can kind of see, you see one, I got a dirty fingernail, but you can see the dirty... You can actually see my fingers come out of there wet. So it's definitely wet in there. That's exactly what we were concerned with. After we started doing this, we had several people kind of post back to us and say, hey, be careful. If you can't prevent any air from getting inside of there, you're going to have condensation form behind that. And a small amount probably isn't a huge deal, but we'd like to avoid it altogether. All right, hold the frame. I have to stop and explain something right here because I know people will look at this and be wondering about it. You can kind of see wire nuts in the background. Wire nuts are absolutely not allowed in electrical systems on boats. And what you're seeing here is as we were doing the work, we had removed all the lighting from the salon. So what you see are temporary LED lights that we have wire nutted in place just to give us some light on the boat these 2 days while we were working on the ceiling. I needed to point that out because I know I will have somebody make a comment on the video, so I just thought I would show it now and explain what we're looking at. All right, let's get back to the video. So let me show you what we then did. That was a spot where we just sort of left off and haven't finished. We then went ahead and pulled a section of the ceiling down, and I'll show you what it looks like where it was completely sealed off. Okay, so to orient yourself, again, we have sort of the same thing. This is on the starboard side of the boat, and you can see what I've done here is I basically pulled my tape off to peel the foam down. I have it just hanging in place, and then I've pulled this radiant barrier down, and you can see the edge of the radiant barrier. Here's that aluminum tape, and it was sealed up all the way up to the boat. And when I look up inside of here, this is much, much drier. I'm not going to say it's 100% dry, but you saw me just rub my hands across that, and they are not wet. There's not droplets forming on my hand like there was on the other side. So I do like our test. I think at the end of the day, our test is proven out that this is a viable solution, and we are now going to redo our work by taping this one back in place and finish doing the rest of the ceiling. All right, Deborah is putting the last piece up. You mean to hold it while you tape? The very last piece in this room. The good news is we only have the galley, the rear stateroom, the rear head, the forward head, the double bunk room, and the V-berth to go.
How's it feel to have the last piece done?
Actually feels really good. Here, get a little staticky from using it as the holder of the foam. But it feels really good. Getting ready to start the wood, and kind of worried about these little alcove here, but I think we can a few cuts and a few kirks worked and we'll get it done.
And some trim work to hide our mistakes.
There you go. Trim work is our friend.
We've run wire throughout the boat where we intend to put LED lighting, and now it's a matter of putting up the ceiling planks. This is actually 3/4 inch pine. We've used small wainscoting before on our previous boat. The challenge is with the little bit of expansion and contraction due to humidity and weather, these tongues in that small wood were just small enough that they could possibly separate. And we had a couple of seams that separated. We really wanted to make sure this was solid, and frankly this boat can handle a little bit of the extra weight. So we're doing 3/4 inch. It's pine. We're probably going to do a wipe on poly. We have a test piece to test that now. However, we're going to start installing this, and the importance here is ensuring that they run true fore and aft, because if they're askew, it would make the whole boat look funny. And if you think about what we essentially have to do, we're going to be putting these up and sliding the tongue and groove in each one. We really need to make sure that we start in an anchored position from the center and we work our way out. We're about to put the first couple of pieces on and ensure they are true before we start putting all the rest up. You'll notice here we went ahead and pre-drilled every single plank to avoid having them split. You'll also probably observe I'm angling these screw holes in a little bit. I want to make sure that the screws can go through the boards and up into the beams and still allow them to be hidden behind the thin molding that we'll have that covers up all of the gaps and openings and screws. And you can see here we've just anchored the center line, even right over the center of the butterfly hatch, and aligned them all up, and that's going to be our guide. And we just start hooking these things on here. Things went pretty fast until we got to the places where the lights would go, and then it took some time to cut the circles and positioning for those. But all of these were connected with marine grade wiring and marine grade crimps that have built-in heat shrink around them. So this way we have good watertight, moisture-proof connections that are all in the ceiling. We left ourselves a little bit of extra room in the event we need to do any work on them. We can easily pull these pucks back down out of the ceiling and then access any of the wires with some room to spare.
I am really excited. So we bought these fans about 3 years ago when we got the boat, but we were so busy doing the refits and stuff, and we weren't really sure where we wanted to put them. So today is the day. They are finally going up. We got this one going up now, and we have that one up over there. So it's the little things in life that make you happy. Hi, babe.
Hi, sweetie. So we have the pine slat ceiling, and this is 3/4 inch tongue and groove. It looks good. It's kind of interesting. You can see these gaps here, right there, and another one here. Those gaps are actually where we had to affix all of the material, and we left a small gap in there so we can run speaker wire across that before we put the trim up there to hide it all. So it looks good. I really like it. Put 5 nice little LED lights up in there, and then mounted up our Carfano Socorro fans and put them on each of these port and starboard side right in front of the port, so they can actually swivel inward or can turn around and work like exhaust fans.
The next step for us is finish work. We will lightly stain these, put on a wipe-on polyurethane, and put all the trim work up. We certainly hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do give it a like and a thumbs up. And I hope you do enjoy a little bit of the bloopers that we had as we put this video together. Safe sailing!
Can you tell everybody about this new ceiling in the boat? Can you describe it?
Yeah. It's pretty and it's wooden, and it looks like a new boat, but it's not. It's an old boat. The paint, if you lean this way, it looks kind of like painted when you look that way. But when you like stand right here, it does look painted. But some of it went down. You can kind of see the droplets that are not going down because it's all painted in and dried up. And I can actually see it. It's so shiny when you look at it that way. It's really not shiny, but it's still pretty. And this boat is still ugly a little bit. To be a rattlesnake again, when it passed away and died.
Did I hit record? I don't remember if I hit f***ing record. Yes, I hit f***ing record. Jeez.
Point at me when you're ready.
What do you call this thing you're doing?
The danceable, handable.